Back everyone. Acts part 2, lesson number 6. This will be our last video. We're looking at the 23rd chapter of Acts, continuing to see what's going on in the life of Paul, right? So Paul is hauled before the religious rulers, and they're going to grill him over what he's doing, what he has been doing, what they've heard, etc., etc. You remember the context. Well, Ananias, Paul says something from the very beginning, and Ananias, the high priest, has Paul struck in the mouth. It's interesting how he does this because he must have looked at one of the soldiers or something, had him do it. Well, what was Paul's response? Well, Paul looks at him and calls him a whitewashed sepulchre, basically. Well, then someone says, well, you shouldn't talk to the high priest that way. And Paul says, well, I didn't know he was a high priest. So that tells us a couple things, that the high priest wasn't dressed in his regalia. Remember, they had been called forth there by the Roman authorities. And then also it tells us that Paul didn't know who the high priest was by face. He would have known the name, he would have known the lineage and stuff like that, but he probably didn't know him by face. Well, what was Paul's response then? Well, then he quotes the Bible and he says, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know that you were the high priest, because, we're supposed to honor folks like that. And he was telling the absolute truth. But you could tell that what he had stated was true is also, because he told the high priest, hey, you're coming in here judging me on the law, and you're breaking the law by striking me like this. Well, I think that Paul saw that this wasn't going to go necessarily well, so he just cut to the chase on it. He was a Pharisee, and he knew the division between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You see it all through the New Testament. And he says, I am a Pharisee, and I'm on trial because of the hope of the resurrection. Well, that did it. That did it. That was a shrewd move right there, because it accentuated the division and brought forth the division. The Sadducees did not believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in afterlife. They didn't believe in angels. They didn't believe basically in heaven. And when you see them speaking with the Lord Jesus Christ and setting him up with the various things that they did with him, you can understand why they did what they did. Well, when Paul did this, he pit these two groups against each other to such a degree that some of the scribes of the Pharisees sect, they came back and said, well, we find no fault with Paul. They were ready to jump on the bandwagon earlier, right? And condemn him and everything. But now they're saying, no, we don't find any fault. Well, it intensifies, becomes a very, very dynamic situation, shall we say. Well, the commander gets Paul and removes him out of there before they cause any harm to him, and removes him to the barracks. And we see that the Lord actually appears to Paul and tells him, says, hey, you've been faithful in what you've done here, and so you're going to be faithful too. I'm going to send you to Rome. Well, this so infuriated the Jews that the commander grabbed him, that there were 40 or more of them that took an oath that said they were going to kill Paul. They weren't going to eat, they were not going to drink until Paul was dead. They actually came to religious leadership and got them in cahoots in it. You notice that? How they did it? They said this, hey, tell the commander you want to interview Paul again. Get him to come down here. And when they're bringing him down, we will kill him before he comes in here. And so apparently the leadership agreed to that. Well, Paul's nephew heard this. Well, that tells us some more things about Paul, right? That he had family. And he heard this and he came and reported it to Paul. Paul said, go report it to the commander. And the young man did. The commander then decided he was going to send Paul to Felix, the governor of the area in Caesarea. And so he got 200 soldiers, 200 spearmen, and 70 horsemen. Boy, did he load them up, okay? And he wasn't going to take any chance there's going to be any harm. So he gets him to Caesarea and includes an intro letter, which I sort of get a chuckle out about it. Go back and read it, what he wrote right there, because the way it comes across is, well, I found this guy right here, and he was really being harmed, so my soldiers rescued him, and we thank you for your excellent leadership. It's your basic political type of letter that you would write. You see a couple of these kind of things happening in the balance of Acts. And so Paul winds up there, and Felix wasn't quite sure what to do, so we see him being kept in Herod's Praetorium. And we'll pick it up there next time because it gets real interesting now. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.